what would you do if you found out that you weren't actually related to the grandmother you thought you were? Well, we're going to be talking about a strange case that was finally solved after being unsolved for a very long time, or unresolved, should I say. We're going to be discussing the disappearance of Mary Agnes Moroney. The woman that grew up as Jeanette Burchard actually was another woman. She was a girl that went missing on May 15th, 1930. Yes, 1930. A very old case. So that girl was Mary Agnes Moroney. At the time of her abduction, a woman named Julia Otis, on May 15th, 1930, when Mary was only 2 years old, abducted her. So this case made national headlines in the 30s and in the 50s, but there was never any solution until this year. But who is Mary Agnes Moroney, you ask? She was the first child of Michael and Catherine Moroney, who lived in an apartment above of a grocery store at 5200 South Wentworth Ave, just prior to the Depression hitting. They were poor, and at the time they would put ads in the paper asking for help. That is when they thought they were lucky, because this woman that went by the name of Julia Otis called the family about having food and gifts for them. So at this time, Catherine was 17 years old, and she was actually pregnant with the couple's third child. I know, very young, very pregnant. But this was a different time. It's not like how it is now. So Julia would come around to their home, and at the time, Mary Agnes was actually playing on the floor. Julia talked to Mary Agnes about going to California, and this made Catherine very uncomfortable. But then the woman left after this brief encounter, only for her to return a little while later to ask about taking Mary Agnes shopping to provide her with some clothes. But this would be the last time that Catherine would see her 2-year-old daughter. Yes, oh yes, Mary Agnes apparently didn't want to go with Julia, and she was having a complete fit. I can totally see why this would make Catherine uncomfortable, but alas, she allowed her daughter to go with her. So just a day after the search would begin for Mary Agnes, because, Julia never returned with Mary Agnes, like she said she was going to, a letter came from Julia Otis. This letter stated that she took Mary Agnes to California and that she would come home in about a month. There was also another letter that came in from a woman named Alice Henderson, who supposedly was Julia's cousin, who talked about how Alice had a nervous breakdown because her child had recently died and her husband had left her. But no matter what correspondence or searching took place, Catherine literally was eaten up by the loss of her child, and it had eaten into her like a cancer. It got so bad that she basically became a recluse. Let me give you kind of more into the first letters. So the first letter said, "Please don't be alarmed. I have taken your little girl to California with me. I have hired a special nurse to care for her. We'll be back in 2 months' time. By that time, you'll be on your feet again, and you'll be able to care for her." She didn't even cry a bit. She is outfitted like a princess. In the meantime, I'll help all I can to get you on your feet. Don't worry about her or anything else. When you get this letter, we'll be on our way already. As ever, Julia Otis. So this correspondence is the last time that the Moroneys ever heard from Julia Otis or anything dealing with Julia Otis. So the second letter, the one from Alice Henderson, would arrive 2 weeks after the kidnapping. Basically, the woman identifies herself as Alice Henderson, being related to Julia Otis. But the thing is that the handwriting is the same, so they know it's the same person. Yes. So we can also go into some other alleged findings of who they thought was Mary Agnes, but eventually would be ruled out. So in July of 1931, so following year, an older Native American woman by the name of Martha Thompson, she was pushing a cart to, basically she wanted to join a circus. And this cart had a 3-year-old, blue-eyed, blonde-haired little girl that looked very similar to Mary Agnes. So basically what had happened is that Thompson said that this girl was abandoned by her mom, and her mom's name was Florence Fuller. Martha then kept begging to keep this little girl. Ultimately, Catherine didn't identify this child as her daughter, so it was instantly nixed. The next time there was an alleged finding was in 1952. So in 1952, Mary McClelland, or Mary Beck, was 24 years old at the time. And she came forward thinking that, hey, I see these photos of this girl. And she thought that she was Mary Agnes. So Mary McClelland had been adopted basically around the time of the kidnapping. And kind of what happened is that they took dental impressions of this girl and they cross-referenced them with Mary Agnes, and they thought that it was her, but it actually wasn't. So what actually happened with this lady is that she was born in 1927, and what kind of happened is that they were able to trace back to where she was born or who actually birthed her, and all intents and purposes, this was not Mary Agnes. Well, let's just kind of get into the more recent jazz, let's say. So let's talk about Jeanette Bershand. So Jeanette was told that she was born on April 14th of 1928, and that she spent the first 6 years of her life in Chicago. She also was told that her father died when she was 2 months old. She was raised by Jeanette Solaric Darris Anderson. I know a lot of last names. And Frank Darris. They raised her in a Catholic household where she never went hungry, she was never abused, and she was well taken care of. Jeanette went on to get married twice and have her own family. So, Mary Agnes's nephew, Don Moroney, so from the Moroney family, had been searching for his aunt since he was in high school. And he was completely convinced that he ended up finding his aunt. But he wasn't the only one that was convinced that they found this missing person. So in comes Terry Arnold. Terry Arnold is the daughter of Jeanette Bershard. If I keep saying that last name wrong in this video, I apologize. I'll put an asterisk with the correct spelling. So Terry is convinced that this missing child is her mother. Interesting, right? Well, the downside about this is that Jeanette actually died when she was about 75 years old, which was roughly 20 years ago in Florida. She was, like I said before, she was married twice, and she had 3 children, and she was raised as an only child by the people that have said to have raised her. Okay, so we're talking about Jeanette Anderson and Frank Darris. So Terry Arnold was contacted by a Cook County detective that wanted to go over the case and go over some things about this case in regards to her mom and in regards to a kidnapping case that was 90 years old, a 90-year-old missing persons case. He also then requested a DNA test. So with this DNA test, they were able to determine that Jeanette was indeed Mary Agnes Moroney. Jeanette's family and the Moroney family would have to make sense of this new family, this new blendedness that they have to get used to now, and basically that they have found loved ones that they never knew they had, or missing loved ones that they wish they had known, but now get to know. Jeanette's birth parents, Michael and Catherine. So Michael died in 1957 at the age of 58, and it is said, direct quote, that his final words were, "They never found my baby girl." And her mother, Catherine, died in 1962 at the age of 49. Catherine was haunted by the loss of her daughter and fell into a deep depressive state. So at this time, like I mentioned, this over 90-year-old missing persons case has now been solved via genetic or forensic genetics. So that, my friends, is a case of Mary Agnes Moroney. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in another video.